it can be playful and purposeful.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
And,
That's actually my life goal, really, is to have a really good balance of play and purpose.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Missy. And this is You Should Meet My Friend.
Today we are talking to Darla Edmonds. 2 quick notes from the editor. You will hear Darla refer to her husband as Brian, Cujo, and Showpony, and you will hear Missy call her husband Chris Magnum. These are military nicknames, and we'll get into how that all happens in this podcast. Secondly, Darla and Missy were together, and while we said it was an in-studio appearance, we don't actually have a studio, so the sound is a little wonky here and there. Hang with us. It's a really great episode, and I'm looking forward to you meeting Darla. Thanks.
We had discussed doing this. I think I texted Missy and said, what if we came up and Brian and Chris could visit?
I was thinking about it today, though, the fact that I didn't know Darla and Cujo in Germany, but man, you guys were such a lifesaver mentally when Cujo and I were at the Pentagon, because it was just so crazy and he's so funny. It just saved my mental health so much.
Well, it just proves how small the Air Force is.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. When we were in Korea, right after we left Germany in 2005, and Brian was a deck commander at Davis-Monthan for the F-16 International Flying Training, IFTU, I think they call it. And after that, we went to Korea. And then, Lenore, Mare, and Tet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, intersecting.
It's so weird. Yeah. It's
I love it.
Because other than the greater Air Force, we don't really have a lot of professional connections, but to end up where we all cross paths is really kind of incredible.
Well, I think coincidence is boring. I think serendipity or intelligence is, like I just don't think it's a mistake that people that we keep circling around to.
Yeah.
They're there for a reason,
Yeah,
the ones we love and the ones that we could, they're grist for the mill or, balm for the soul.
Not only did Cujo and I work together, but you guys lived in our neighborhood. And so we exchanged dog sitting for a while there. That was really great.
Layla.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun. Remember the big snowstorm? And we walked to your Christmas party?
Exactly.
Don't cancel it. Just walk there.
Yeah. Because poor Greg, he knew I'd been cooking all day. And so he was secretly making calls to the neighbors. I've shoveled the walk. Come over. We have so much food. She's been working hard.
Aww. Have you been out here yet, Elizabeth?
I have not.
It's
We
awesome.
right before Christmas, the kids and Greg and I skied in Park City for a couple of days, but it was days before Christmas. So I didn't even figure out how we could meet up because it's a crazy time, but
that's a long drive too. That's that's going to be a 3-hour drive.
And she told me.
So when we were in Tucson, and we've been wintering there for a while, we have good friends from when we were assigned there. And also, it's nice to be there in the winter. But Elizabeth's parents lived not very far from where we were. And we went up and had casual dinner with them right after Michael had finished hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Aww.
So that's the last time I saw Elizabeth in person since before Brian retired, for sure.
Yeah. Well, when we were at Andrews, we would have lunch once a month or something. And it turned into, maybe we should get coffee since we've been sitting here so long, or let's go shopping or doing something. So
exactly. Winters in Arizona are just so awesome. I would go back there and live in a heartbeat.
Well, that's one of the reasons why the RV really works for us, is because we haven't decided where we want to land yet. And now, in the world of divine order or serendipity or whatever you want to call it, we had sold our house in Maine. Well, my father passed away during the pandemic. And it was just my mom. And Brian's parents are in their late 80s. So we're spending lots of time. We have the privilege of doing that now that we're retired. We're big travelers. Sure. I'm not sure if it was who I was talking to about this, but the difference between how military families show up and support family versus people who live around.
For sure.
We'll come and camp out for 3 weeks or a month and make sure everything's taken care of. And we'll make sure we have, our stuff handled, and we'll support you. And So my brother and his wife lived in Virginia and were like the on point to
Mm-hmm.
be partners with my parents as they were going through that first part of their aging process. And a few years ago, they bought a home on the Intercoastal Waterway
Oh, nice.
in Ormond Beach, Florida, and they're
Okay.
spending more and more time down there. So this is like this perfect time for Brian and I to slide in and be there with her more. And so we're not ready to buy yet. But so we have this nice RV. We pull it out of storage and put it in a family camp at Davis Monthan. And we've stayed there for a couple of winters. And then one winter, Brian had, other than flying F-16s, I would assert it's his favorite military oriented contract or job that he ever had, doing beta testing with the special ops guys. So they're just testing all this crazy, right up Brian's alley, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how we wound up in Tucson in the first place. And we're going back in April.
Nice.
Really, really good friends of ours from Japan just retired. And
Oh,
they're
cool.
doing like 1 year of like van life. And
Uh-huh.
they're going to be down there for a couple of weeks. So we'll go down.
And you guys are in Park City now?
And we're actually staying at Hill Air Force Base in our
Okay.
RV. We've stayed up in Park City before, though. There's a really nice RV resort. If you ever want to go up there,
Mm-hmm.
month to month between October and I think April, it's like $1,300 a month. They have a huge clubhouse and a hot tub. It's 10 minutes from the canyons and 20 minutes from parking and skiing in Park City, and
Oh,
a very
nice.
cool group of retired. You have to have a 10-year-old or newer RV unless you pass muster. Like, you can't just be there in a jalopy.
Well, and that's why we're going to have to upgrade, because we're starting to get into that. I mean, it still looks nice, but age-wise, they look at it and they're like, ah.
I like camping, but I'm ready for my bed to not be on the ground. So,
Yes.
but I also I'm not ready for something that I'm not comfortable driving. That's like
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
you can do it.
and like my in-laws had like a 40-foot motorhome, and I was just like, this is a lot of useless space, and she's like, yeah, but the kids can. And I'm like, I'm not going with my kids, like maybe my dogs. And so ours gets a little smaller and smaller, because like I want something that I can back in and I can maneuver.
Yep.
But I mean, I drive a hearse, so I know how to drive big vehicles. But
I want to hear more about your job. I adore that.
I want to hear more about all that you've been up to the last 20 years.
Well, my
Okay,
question
that
is
sounds
a
right
trick
on the
question, and that is, what's your home address?
Yeah.
Where do you get mail?
So South Dakota has a special status, and it's financially really smart for them. It's called the nomad status. So there are several states that have it. If you don't live there year round and you don't live anywhere else more than 6 months a year, you can have it's called a PMB. It's like a permanent mailbox. It costs a little more, but that's your actual permanent address. You pay taxes in South Dakota. We can register all of our fleet of vehicles and
Nice.
motorcycles and stuff there. You don't have to have it inspected there. Like if we had kept Maine,
Mm-hmm.
your stuff has to be inspected there every year, retag it. And so there's some latitude there. So that's our official
Home of record.
home of record.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we call it, right, in the military. And then we're traveling a lot and loving it.
Yeah. But you guys have for quite some time now. So you haven't gotten tired of it.
We sold our house in 2022, the house in Maine.
Okay.
So we had two homes. I was explaining this to Missy before. We still had our house here and our house in Maine. And when
Mm-hmm.
Brian first graduated from culinary school, we were going back and forth from Utah to ski in the winter and go to Maine in the summer. I don't know, do I go into whole why we sold the house? And so
Yeah.
the neighborhood that we were living in here in Utah, we were on a run one day and we got to a road that had been widened and they had added turn lanes. It was like adjacent to our little neighborhood. And we
Mm-hmm.
got curious about what was getting built because it would change the dynamics of the community. There was a lot of farmland that was being sold off and built into different things. And I said, this road is going somewhere. We need to find out where this road is going. So we went to a couple of different town offices and it was a brand new through road to the landfill.
Oh.
So all the dump trucks were going to be transiting adjacent to our neighborhood and going to the landfill. We thought now's a pretty good time to sell. We have our house in Maine. So we sold our house in Utah for good money. I was on the market for 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
Very good thing. And we did one winter in Maine and we were like, oh, no, just no. So then that's when we've had RVs since 1994, but
Sure.
that's the first time we got the RV and like escaped for an entire winter and liked it. So then we were like RVing in the winter and going back in the summer. And then the pandemic just changed everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we sold the house in Maine 2 years ago. We have a massive storage unit that has all of our stuff in it. And I don't miss listen, I have sentimental things there, very meaningful, but they're bits and pieces. Most of it, if I never saw it again, I listened to a few of your podcasts and I listened to Sheila talk about
her fire,
right?
her moving truck. Yeah.
Fire, and we just shove it off the boat and just be done with it. But we'll do that keep, donate, sell.
Yeah.
At some point, but it's cheap to store it. So happily on the road. We have friends I'm not saying we have a lot of friends, the same amount of friends as anybody else, and they're sprinkled across.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe we have the privilege of having more friends because we're developing new communities like every 3 years.
Yeah. I think that's just comes from the military life. Like you have a group of 20 or 30 super close people, would donate a kidney if you needed it, but they don't live in your zip code. Maybe 2 or 3 of them live in your zip code, but one might live overseas and one's on the West Coast and one's here and one's there. And then my own family's like that. My mom's in Arizona, Greg's parents are in California, so we're scattered everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Darla, Trevette's at Mary Dillon's this month. And so he didn't go home back to Maryland. Mary's always sending me pictures now of my kid at her house, and he looks totally ecstatic. But when we had Chris's retirement in Indiana, our family and friends there were like, who are all these people? And I'm like, well, I know him. He lives in Colorado and they live in Virginia. And he came in from Iraq. And then my friend who's stationed in Japan, she's a DOD teacher and she's from Indiana. So I had all these people and people are like, how do you know all these people? And I'm like, oh, this is my military family. And they're just like, and they came for you. And I'm like, why do you act so shocked?
Yeah, it is a unique, and I always felt like a very privileged position to be in. I think because all these people and there's an affinity and a kinship based on the mission and sort of our common lifestyle. And then I was telling a friend of mine, I went to a reunion here in Salt Lake because we were here the longest military wise for 8 years.
Wow.
Because he was out here. So we had the privilege of being here a little bit longer. But so there's a little reunion my friends had Friday. She was asking me about like friendships and how so many people. And I was explaining to her that because she's been here for this whole time, since almost 30 years now. I think you have this kinship with these people and an affinity. And then there's like your little core group of like 5 or 6 people in our case, it was like the ski club and cycling, right? The Tannenbaum Ski Club and cycling. And I just went to Greece with all the Tannenbaumers when I was in Europe. I took a week away from Brian. He rode his motorcycle with rudder by himself. And I went sailing with my friends from the ski club, right?
Nice.
So, but you have like each assignment, I would say my number is like 4 or 5. Like you said, give a kidney to. So you meet and fall in love with it. You would do anything for. And then everyone else, see how you see and enjoy when you see each other. And those are the people that you stay in touch with, go visit, or they let you know when they're bouncing through town. And
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
My mom always jokes because, they travel a lot. Trevette moved from here to the East Coast and he stayed with friends along the way. And my mom's just like, people everywhere, but I'm not afraid to reach out. Even though I haven't seen Darla for 20 years,
Facebook,
I would be like, where are you? One time I was driving through winter back from Washington State after Guthrie had surgery. And I was just like reaching out to people. And I have a friend that's a truck driver. And he was like, I'm out on the road. If you get in a pickle, give me a call.
So one of my other burning questions for you, Darla, is that you guys took your own motorcycles and your dog to Europe for a vacation, which just seems...
But you were there a while.
Yeah, I know you went for a while, but I'm just curious, like the logistics of shipping motorcycles and then being able to take your dog with you. Now, Rudder is like, he's fun sized, so he's probably easier to move around.
Than Yuki and Valley, for sure.
Right.
That was on purpose. because we've always had big dogs, and we want a dog that we can pile on the plane and fly home to take care of family now. Now
Sure.
we're in the position to do that, and my other family members can be a little more freed up. But we're big planners, and we love to speculate. Brian and I are big speculators. So when we're in Tucson and we're hanging out, cooking on the grill or whatever, we might be thinking about like, what if we this, or what if we that, or we meet people and they talk about something fun that they did. So it's already kind of like there's a modicum of pre-planning that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then the occasion arises where you can pull the trigger
Right.
on the plan. So we had talked forever about motorcycle touring in Europe, and we were at a gathering of motorcycle people, like a BMW owners weekend kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. They had presenters come, and one of the presenters is a guy that lives in Heidelberg. You guys know Heidelberg.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Great place.
his name is Stefan Knopf, Knopf,
Mhm.
maybe two F's. And his whole business is shipping motorcycles between the United States and Germany. Germans that want to ship motorcycles to the United States and tour here. And then on the return haul, he brings, it was only, take this with a grain of salt, $1,500 per motorcycle to ship them over
That's
there.
not bad though.
That's where we've shipped cars overseas. That's about what it costs.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
rent one for a week is $1,500.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well,
And
we
that
have
way too, you have a very familiar, it's very familiar equipment.
Right.
So we shipped them over, and we had two other motorcycles that we could ride here. So they're still there.
Oh, wow.
So we store them for a year. It's 400 euro for a year,
Oh my.
which is peanuts.
Yeah.
And then we can go back and pull them back out of storage. And he has a big Airbnb that's on the same property in Heidelberg, beautiful property. It's got this huge garage, kind of like the one that you and Chris just built.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it has a big basement underneath it, and then up in the
Wow.
rafters, and they have these cool lifts, and they lift your motorcycle up and store it, and you have a little storage locker there.
Oh, cool.
So we randomed into that guy, and we're like, oh, we could
Yeah.
start to see.
Yeah.
So then, like 6 months out, we started planning. Brian hooked up all the Airbnbs. Do you know what we were paying like average a night? 100 euro. With like a
Wow.
full kitchen in beautiful places, and and stayed for 100 euro a night in this beautiful old palace. And if you ever want somebody to hook you up with cool, there were a couple of duds. There was one that we literally drove up and drove away. We just sacrificed the whole money. Like, we're getting a hotel. It was a sketch. Other than that, it just worked out perfectly. They're over there. We'll go back. We were going to go this year, but we're a little tired now. Us, I know, right?
Yeah.
But we
Don't
are.
believe it.
Yeah.
We are.
So
Yeah.
how long did you tour around? It was a couple weeks, right?
9 weeks.
9 weeks. Whoa.
Mhm. We
Very
did
cool.
7 countries.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
So, but we have short driving days. Like, we committed to not more than and we don't ride on the highways. We never went on the Autobahn. It's all back. Right. Why would you do
Right.
for
Yeah.
me 70 miles? We're just kind of tootling through all the cute little towns. And
Very
so we
cool.
would ride for maybe 5 hours a day.
That's
Max.
nice. I know. I want to go on vacations where you don't have an agenda. I mean, a lot of our vacations were centered around moving. It's like, oh, we got to be in, Seattle by
Yeah.
this amount of time. But I just want to take a road trip, and you're just like, what's this? Let's stay here for a day or
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
Greg and I have talked about driving either Route 1, which is, Canada all the way down to the Florida Keys,
Yeah.
or Route 50, which starts in his hometown of Sacramento and goes through Annapolis and out to the
the
Shore.
Eastern Shore.
It's on our very long list of things we would like to do.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, when are we going to have time for all this? But we have another lifetime coming up. Chris will retire in about 12 years, and then we'll do things like that. And our kids, who knows where they'll be.
Right.
They can come. They'll come visit. Trust me, if you go on this trip, they'll come
I
meet
know,
you.
right?
Exactly.
3 different couples on our trip in Europe when they found out we were going.
Oh, that's
They
awesome.
were like, can we come meet you? We had one couple flew out, and they met us at Riva del Garda, and we motorcycle rode every day, and they did what they do, which is like museums, restaurants,
Awesome.
and then we'd have dinner every night and go to bed and get up
Nice.
in the morning. What are you going to do? And then we went to the Cinque Terre with them.
Nice.
Oh, that's on our list.
My cousin and his wife were hiking the Alterweg, which is like the high road
Uh-huh.
all the way across Austria.
Oh, wow.
And so we met them a couple of times when we were motorcycling.
Very
in
cool.
Austria. And then a good friend, my friend that I hiked the Camino de Santiago with, flew over and met us in Spain. And we did that last little bit from Santiago to Finisterre on the
Uh-huh.
coast together, Brian, Corey, and I.
Nice.
So
You should write a book
no,
Very
or a
cool.
travel blog or something.
Yeah.
it's a lot.
But you got to put it down on paper, Darla. Or
Do you guys
I
ever
know.
have a thing when you're at a party and someone introduces you to someone and they ask you what would ordinarily occur as a relatively simple like question? Like,
yeah.
where are you from?
Oh, yeah.
Or what do you do? I don't know how many different kinds of jobs you've had, Missy. Sometimes I sort of choose a theme for the evening and I kind of hang with it.
Now, what I love is when they go, "Oh, where do you live?" "Oh, I live in Utah." "Oh, are you from there?" "No, I'm from Indiana." But I haven't lived there for like 20 plus years because I also live, I remember I was one time having this conversation with another military person, and they were like, "Well, we used to be stationed at so and so." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we were there. But that was before so and so." And by the end of it, he was like, "You're lying. Why am I lying?" And he goes, "You haven't lived that many places." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have, man. Yeah." And they don't believe you, right?
How
Yeah.
many different, well, I've had someone say to me, like, I'm on that side of the room at a New Year's Eve party, talking to someone I haven't met about my time in the military. And then an hour and a half later, I'm on the other side of the room talking about doing research for the NIH. And they're like, I thought you were in the military. Oh, I was.
Yeah.
But you worked for the NIH?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
Done it
You know
all.
what I mean? Or like I was telling her, a friend of mine invited me to come work with him at his adventure travel company. So it's kind of flailing and he needed some fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Right,
So I
right.
randomly worked in adventure travel for a year. Or like my brother, he worked for the post office forever. He donated blood one time. And they said, if you want to, you can be tested to see if you're a match for someone for a bone marrow donation.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's sure test me. I got a daughter. If she had, I would want, yeah, he'd never
Yeah.
been asked. And like 6 months later, they called him and they said, we think we have it. It was between him and one other person. And he donated bone marrow. So it's the first time my radar went up about organ and tissue donation. And then I randomly had the opportunity to work on a speakers bureau here, advocating for the conversation about organ and tissue donation. And I worked in public education most of my career. So I was already public health education. So it was right, at least in the wheelhouse, if not
Sure.
on the rim, and I did that for 4 years. And so that's all over the map. But there's a through line of public health education for the majority of my career. So that's what I usually go for if I want it to be shorter.
Yeah. Shorter description.
Well, my boys tell me that my talking about my job is really a buzzkill at a party, but you'd be surprised how many people when I talk about funerals.
And that's all then the whole conversation becomes absolutely.
And then they're like, I've always been curious. Can I ask you a question? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing off the table.
And much like, Darla doing outreach for bone and tissue donations. I mean, I think maybe we don't talk about funerals and preferences and stuff like that as much as maybe we should, because people get like wigged out. You don't want to ask grandma what her funeral preferences are, because maybe she'll think that you're planning on her demise or something.
Well, for a while I was working and volunteering at an assisted living. And so those people they're like, are you trying to recruit us for your other job? And I'd be like, I'm just saying, I'll take care of you either here or the great beyond. I'll get you ready. You'll look pretty. But when you're talking to someone who maybe has lived in the same place all their life, it really becomes like they kind of doubt you, or they look at you like,
sometimes
you're a phony. Sure. You're a phony. But when you're in a military or you're in a transit kind of field or community, they like get it. They're like, oh yeah. And then you find, especially in the military, you're like, who do we know? Because
there's always going to be some mutual connection.
Yeah, it's not even 6 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a funny story to tell about call signs. You would have had a call sign.
Right.
I was at a party in Salt Lake. So this is when Brian was in the reserves and working as a contractor. So he was in and out of town. The neighbor, his name was Tom. I can't remember his last name. he comes over, he goes, "Oh, we're having a party for the 4th of July. You know, you're new in town. You might not." I go, "Oh, no, thank you so much. I do have plans. We've actually been in Utah for quite a while. I could swing by later." So I went to that party later in the evening, and his girlfriend was there. It's one of those both side of the rooms conversations.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm on one side of the room talking to someone who knows Brian as Cujo.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on the other side of the room talking to someone who just knows him by his first, normal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Let an hour and a half go by, a couple
I
of
know where
beers
this
go
is
down
going.
the spot. She sidles up to me on this bench. I don't know her from Adam, but she's nice. I get along with everybody as long as they're not mean.
Yes.
Then
I hear you.
But you can even be mean if you're having a hard day. Just
Yeah.
let me know that's what's going on. Anyway,
Right.
so she sidles up and she puts her arm around me, and she's got that little kind of half slosh. She goes, "Darla," she's like, "you just seem like a nice, solid, nice person. I just think you should let that Cujo guy go. Because you seem like you're really in love with Brian."
She thought you had.
She said I had a boyfriend and a husband, and that she was on notice. And I just looked at her, and I'm like, she's being
Sincere.
and
Yes.
drunk. Is it drunk seer?
Yeah.
It's really drunk and
I like
sincere,
it.
right? And she's just and I'm like stifling laughing at her. And then so then I had to explain, like, well, so he's a pilot and they have nicknames and they call him call signs. So Cujo and Brian are the same. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Oh my gosh.
Because he
So
didn't
really.
seem like that kind of person and blah, blah. So,
Scruples. That's
Yeah.
character. You didn't like cheaters.
well,
And she thought you were a cheater.
she's being very nice about it.
That's right. Well, at work, there's like 3 Chris's, and they decided in a meeting, they were like, we got to differentiate, you know?
Mhm.
And he was telling me about this, and I said, "Oh, great. Are you finally known as Magnum?" And he goes, "No, just Keister." And I was like, "That's so lame." Like, and he goes, "They just couldn't get it. They just did not understand where the Magnum came from." And so he was like, "I didn't want to go through the whole, like, I was in Korea and I was on a bus and it was a naming ceremony and we're all like 3 sheets to the wind. Like, there was a whole backstory as to how he got it."
I always.
And,
The
you know,
real one and the one you tell.
that's right. And be known as Little E. And he didn't want to go into the whole backstory. So he's like, "Easter's fine." I was like, "Oh,
Easter's fun to say, though.
I know, isn't it?
It's a fun word. And I love the name of your place here.
All in Keister. I know.
There were a couple of names. I think I backed. I was like, it has to be Hall.
Has to be. I know, but it was fun.
You guys need merch.
We need merch.
I'd love a t-shirt that said, "You should meet my friends." You guys are amazing. I have other friends that are amazing. I feel so privileged to be around smart, like, I
Right.
get what you guys are doing here, like extraordinarily ordinary people. Just blessed to be around so many cool people. And
We have lots of conversations. It's like, okay, who's for the next season? We're always thinking ahead, and you're talking to your friends, you see something on Facebook and you're like making notes. You're like, we gotta have notes, or it just is a light bulb moment. I sit up in bed and I'm like, I gotta call so and so because they gotta be on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So it is fun. It is fun. And then you learn so much about people. Even people you think you
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I never knew that.
I think too that I listened to 3 of your episodes, and I listened to your one the end of your first
Season 1.
Yeah.
And you were talking about what topics or like what kind of people. And I will tell you something, I am extraordinarily interested in people.
Yeah.
And especially people that are really different from me.
For sure.
My joke is always, if everybody was like me, there would be no room on any of the trails. All the, you couldn't get on a ski lift because there'd be 1,000, you know what I mean? So I just mean, like, my father used to always say, there's a butt for every seat on the planet.
Aww.
In a sweet way.
Yeah.
So I love people that are really doing something that for me would be really outside of the box.
For sure.
Like someone that's been born and raised and lived for 3 generations in the same place. My friend in Maine, Sharon Holden. He's going to be, her husband's a lobster fisherman, high school educated. I met her in my crafting group. She's about like yay tall and yay, and I adored her. She came to our restaurant. We were across the street from the general store. This is how I met this lady. There was a tree that was like had not been maintained in forever, and it was brushing up against the edge of the restaurant. And we had to take it down. It was ruining the roof. It was ruining the siding. There was like a leak there. So we had just moved there. We were out there with the chainsaw. She comes walking over with her glasses like on the edge of her nose. And she's like my age, but her occurring is just, she's very grandmotherly. And she walks over and she goes to Brian, you know, you're cutting down the town Christmas tree.
Oh, no.
No pressure there.
He's like, what? And she's like, yeah, we light this tree up every year at Christmas time. And Brian's like, it's eating the building. Like, this tree has to come down. She's like, oh, well, just make sure, because all these lights belong to Betsy. Just don't cut the light string.
I want those back.
Which had already been done. But anyway, but I don't know. There was something about the way she felt self-possessed to come over and just announce to us what was going on. I was like, what's your name? She's like, my name is Sharon. I've been living here for 3 generations. I said, well, we should hang out because you're the boss. You know what I mean? So she was my little bestie.
Yeah.
Crafting every Tuesdays. I learned how to do primitive rug hooking.
Oh, wow.
I have some rugs I made.
So fascinating.
Very cool.
I'm sitting here going, wow. Now, I've always told my kids, if you're the smartest or the most interesting person in the room, you're like in the wrong room, right? You should always be trying to go to different rooms to find more interesting and smarter people. Lots of people think I'm interesting or smart because I hang out with all those people.
Well, that's my point about friends, right? Having a diverse group of friends, you expose yourself to stuff. Like, you're writing. You're writing now or thinking about writing, Elizabeth?
I'm working on a project. Yep.
And then you have Sheila on, all this inspiring.
It was very inspiring to talk to her. You know, everybody has some special, cool, interesting skill that's not yours, but to learn what they do and how they do it, I think is just.
But then I think also, like you said something about, what's her name? Cheryl?
Oh, Sharon Holden.
Sharon Holden. Like, you also need those people who are rooted in your community and that have lived there all their lives. Like, they, you know, I feel like, wow, I know them and I can name drop. And that's what I do here, because a lot of my coworkers are from this area. And I just say, oh, yeah, like I know Lynn Hobbs, or I know, you know, so-and-so. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And
see a little credibility in the local community.
Absolutely.
Creating those connections is natural, like in group, out group, like who do I know that, like, where do we intersect?
Right.
Interest, family, religion, politics. You guys were talking about like what, you know, like where people intersect, where you can understand, if not agree on anything. So I think one of the privileges of living all over the place and living in a country where I didn't, like in Japan, I learned Japanese because I taught English as a second language in a English immersion classroom. So I said, here's the deal. You guys are going to try and speak English, and I'm going to try and learn a little bit of Japanese along the way.
I like it.
Both the languages are difficult for them. My name is Darla. Start with
that's hard.
Yeah. So, you know, but it's something, it's humbling. It's your world is not the world. Yeah. I love that. And you said something that reminded me to reach back earlier in the conversation. And I feel, and I have some friends that are a little bit younger than me and they're getting older, and you can hear this kind of like lament sometimes. And they're like, oh, my body or my ear. You know what? I wouldn't trade a day for the groundedness I have about, and I hope it continues to expand, but it's not there.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I think that's when you graduate.
Yeah, right.
So I'll graduate when I'm there. So I don't want to be there yet, but to continue to expand that sort of humility of like, I have my butt in my seat. Right. And there's seats all over the world with the unique views and experience, whether you have 3 generations in a community or you're choosing to be a little wanderer, nomadic, or whatever. And the more people you know that are different than you, the more maybe compassion.
Oh, for
you
sure.
Have for other people, yeah. Like, I don't know why they would do that, you know, or.
Well, and these are conversations I try to have people who make those overall generalizations statements, like all Utahns or all whatever. And it's like, really, all of them. Somebody was like, all the teenagers these days. And I'm like, you know, all of them. There's literally millions and millions of them. So, you know, all of them. And I hope I've dropped that mentality of all, you know, those generalizations, because now I know people that are from all over the world and different races, nationalities, religions, whatever it may be. And I think you're right. It makes you look at the world differently. and that it's not so big, and we all really are kind of alike. There's more that we
Everybody's up
have.
to the same stuff.
Yeah.
They got to eat, sleep,
Yeah.
Need to get an income somehow,
Right.
connect with people, try and recreate, recreate,
Yeah.
create stuff.
Well,
Everybody's doing the same thing in a different language inside of a different culture.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And in my work, where you watch different people of different nationalities, different religions, faith beliefs, no belief in faith, whatever, we all mourn, we all lose, we all love the same. And it's just kind of like, once you realize that, you're like,
that has to be so fascinating for you, Missy, in that everyone
write books about it.
Everyone's at your funeral home because a loved one has died. So that's the same for all your interactions, but their relationship with the people that are planning their funeral, I'm sure, varies greatly from very positive to sometimes negative. And then their particular traditions must change from time to time. And I mean, between different people.
For sure.
So
the family we served yesterday is a Catholic Hispanic family. And long story short, I'm standing there having a conversation with a lovely couple, and they tell me they've been here since like 1987. They moved here as a young couple, new to the country. And he was so proud because he was like, I have 5 sons, 3 of which have played college football. They all are going to college. He's like, that was a requirement. Like, we were like, we moved here. You're going to college. You are reaping the benefits of living someplace where you can do that. And I come home and I'm telling my husband, I'm like, oh, I met this wonderful couple. Just, I wanted to like bring them home. They're such good people. And he was like, that's Alex's parents. I'm pretty sure, because that is exactly his coworker, Alex. That's his story. Like, he went to that school. He lives in that town. His he's like, his parents have been here since like the 80s. And I was like, will you tell Alex I love his parents? And, again, all connected. Once you start talking to people, there's a theme. Yeah.
So we should get to our official questions.
Yes. My face already hurts.
I know. I heard you talking about it.
I think I say that every time. I think, we've had conversations off this podcast, just like, I don't know. It just brings me so much joy to talk to people. I mean, I love doing this because I get to talk to all sorts of people I don't know, people I haven't seen for a while. But I'm just like, my jaw hurts, my face hurts.
Even my close friends, so much of your relationship is just like a quick message or a quick text or whatever. And occasionally get together and you get to have longer conversations, but actually sitting down and concentrating on having a conversation with a person is not, you don't really get.
These are meaningful. The impetus of these conversations particularly, and I, by the way, always prefer a deep dive over a superficial, how about those cowboys? I mean, I'm happy to start there.
Right.
And I like to mingle. I mean, I know how to be at a party, but I prefer, like, if Missy were to start talking about her work, I joke at dinner, you guys. I literally, at some point, I realize I'm being such an interviewer that I pick up my spoon and I go like I hold it to my mouth and I ask the next question. And they understand that I realize that I'm like picking their brain about what they do. Right. But I appreciate the purposeful nature of when you're creating like a podcast or you're like, I want to get together and talk to you about where where my boy's gonna go to college. About aging parents, right? A lot of my friends' parents are aging now. That's a card. Kids going away to college or getting married, aging parents. And but it can be playful and purposeful.
Well, yeah. Sure. And
that's really my life goal, really, is to have a really good balance of play and purpose.
Yeah.
Of course, I think this is particular to female friendships, and maybe that's not true, but I feel like you're always going to be like, oh, you have this issue. I just read this book. You should read this book. Or here's this cool TV show I know about. And this is kind of where this all started. Like, oh, I have a friend that's been through that. You should connect with them. So,
well, and in my job, I am the only female constant. We have a few that, help us. But
mostly men.
Yeah, it's mostly men. And they've been doing it a while. And I always feel like it's speed dating because you're going to know them for maybe, 24 hours. And I will still see people around town and I'll talk to them. I don't always remember their situation or who died or their name, but I recognize them.
because it's here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I will say to the guys, I'll be like, it's the one lady whose husband and her kid, her husband, her kid, this, that. And they're like, what? Who are you talking about? We don't know anybody like that. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'll be like, her name's this. And they're like, oh, yeah. Well, how did you know all that other stuff? And I'm like, because I talked to her. I listened. I asked questions, because I want to know them so I can help them in an authentic, personalized way. So, sometimes I'll be like, oh, what was your dad like? Tell me about him. What did he enjoy? Or, and you learn a lot.
I did get your questions.
All right. I was wondering, Missy, like who would be the asker of the questions?
We should go back and forth, maybe, since she's a mutual friend.
Love that.
I'll start first.
Okay.
Darla, I mean, you've already shared some of this, but what's the most interesting place you have traveled? And even though you've already shared that, or is there some place you haven't been that's really interesting and it's your dream location that you would like to go?
Well, the most interesting place I lived was not my favorite place that I lived.
Oh,
so being interested in and learning a lot about a place and getting like familiar with an unfamiliar culture, or in this case, it was Japan. And I loved being in Japan. It was the most interesting place that I was. I was doing a lot of triathlons at the time, and we created a runners and riders club on base, Misawa Runners and Riders, and we went to all the local races. So we made lots of friends off base, and there's so much I loved about it, but I didn't like it there because this was before the breakup of Ma Bell, and just to stay in touch with family was like $500 a month.
Oh yeah.
Still complain that you weren't calling off, and I'm like, you call me. So Japan was the most interesting. Food. I became a little sushi commando.
Yeah.
I still have really good friends from Japan. The ones I'm meeting down, well, they happen to be Americans, but I also have Japanese friends.
Yeah.
And so it was the most interesting, but not my favorite. No disrespect intended.
Yeah.
For the reasons I already talked about. It's just really hard to get home. And, when you're both working full time, which we were, 5 days to get over jet lag, you can't even really just go home for a week. So the majority of any of your vacation or leave time is consumed with trying to see family.
Yeah.
So just those were the reasons it wasn't my favorite. But
That's
Japan,
exactly
living in Japan.
how I felt.
Where's your dream travel place, destination? Where would you want to travel to that you have not been yet? Which is probably hard for you because you've been a lot of places.
Right. No, but let me think about it. There's nothing on the hit list right now.
Really?
Like we want to go back to a couple of places. I always thought I wanted to go to Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
I don't want to fly for 19 hours.
I know.
The day that someone gifts me first class, like lay down and sleep and fly, I'll go there.
I think you have to do it that way.
I really wouldn't do it any other way. So that's like on the list, but I don't. And also this year when we decided not to go back to Europe and pull the motorcycles, Brian and I were talking about all the places in America that we haven't been yet, staying in the United States and going all kinds of funky places we've never been.
Yeah.
So that's on the hit list. So oddly, like antithetical to what most people are dreaming about doing right now. We stay a little closer to home.
So I'm like you. Like I would like to really just drive to those places and take it slow and
I need like all the funky places you've never visited in America. Like
I know.
But write it.
Right.
You write it.
And then I'll start
I'm sure it's
knocking them out. And I think if you do, and that's why I do like to talk to people, because it's like, now where did you go or where did you live?
Oh yeah.
To check that out. Oh
what do you call it? Traveling low to the ground.
Oh, I love it.
So that's kind of our thing.
That could be the name of your website, your travel website.
Traveling
low to the ground. Like rudder.
Yeah, like rudder.
But no. So I think sometimes our hindrances is like people, It's like, can we go in the off season? That's what I'm waiting for. It's the off season.
Yeah. I want all future trips to be in March and October because we don't have to travel when relative to the school schedule anymore.
Right. So I'm looking forward to those days.
So what was the next question?
The next one is, what do you want to be known for? Not to be morbid, but on your gravestone someday, or when somebody 4 generations from now researches your family history and they look up Darla Edmonds, what do you want to be known for?
It's in the world of like trying. I keep telling Brian that it's important to me that I can fail at anything if I tried my hardest.
Mm-hmm.
Not like extra, like annoyingly, but if I know that I put my best foot forward in any endeavor in life with kindness, like the prime directive from whatever Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
I always tell Brian, kindness is my prime directive. So maybe that's what my epitaph would be. Because I believe that I'm so emotional right now.
That's okay.
No, because listen, I think every single problem in the world could get solved if everyone was and I'm just not about like me, pat myself on the back, but I do believe it is that love.
Yeah.
Like trying to find a place to understand people.
Yeah.
And find a place to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everything works out. I just do. So kindness is the prime directive is probably what my epitaph should say.
We did not talk about this, and I think this is a good segue. That's why I'm bringing it up. Tell us more about what you and Brian did with your restaurant in Maine.
So it's actually one of the questions as well.
Is it on?
It is a good segue because one of them is like, tell us about organizations that you volunteer for. And so, like I said before, people see a lot of our play, but what they don't realize is peppered in there is a lot of volunteerism.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
People always say like, well, you're not working. And my answer is usually no, right? I trade a lot of stuff for time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll drive an older car or I'll do whatever so that I have more time. But we do a lot of work. We just don't get paid for it. So we have the privilege of giving our time now. So in Maine, we had that little restaurant. And E knows this because we saw her whenever we were visiting with her family, that we didn't open. It was defunct. It hadn't been open for like 5 years. So we brought it up to speed so that we could bring in chefs to partner with Brian and do benefit, like 2 seatings, like chef's tasting menu. And so we used the restaurant for that purpose. So we did for Friends of Acadia National Park. There was a home hearth heating. I forget what they called it now, but to support people who needed help paying their heating bills in the winter in Maine. You guys know who E.B. White is, right?
Yes.
Author?
Yeah. Charlotte's
Web. Him and his wife summered in Brooklyn, Maine, where our house was. And there's a little library that him and his wife built called Friend Memorial Library. It's a very cool place. It has a lot of original E.B. White books.
Oh, wow.
Signed, like the artist renderings for like Stuart Little. Like
wow.
It's a very old building and it needs a lot of upkeep. So we would do benefits for Friend Memorial Library. We would raise money so the kids in the school there that couldn't maybe afford to do the field trip down to New York City for a week. We raised money for the backpack program to put food. Maine Island Trail Association. There's a string of islands off the coast of Maine. There's 317 of them. That number may have changed that fall under the purview of this stewardship organization. So we raised money for MIDA. So anyway, that's what we did with the restaurant.
But that is so fascinating to me. You took something so simple and you could have like opened up something and tried to make money, but you felt like there was a need. That was a great way to raise money for things. I think kindness is going to go on your epitaph. I mean, really, honestly, you live a life that just oozes kindness.
So the most recent thing we're doing is in Montana. There's an organization called Heroes and Horses. This is a guy that we ran outside of a bar. He came up to look at my motorcycle because he wanted one like it for his wife. And we were like, hey, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm running this veterans organization that's geared around, they call it the UN program. So these are veterans that are suffering from some degree of, typically it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's interfering with their ability to live their life fully expressed.
Yeah.
So this program is about integrating, like that there's really a structure for that people go through when they're being treated for PTSD in our Veterans Administration and through the Department of Defense. That's kind of predictable. It includes a lot of medications, right? And so this UN program is, I'm just giving you my take on it, right? You could read about it on Heroes and Horses. Is about creating a space for those people to integrate what they know in this horse ranch environment. They rescue Mustangs and they bring the Mustangs up to the ranch. And that's who they pair the veterans with, are these Mustangs who are also kind of in a transition space,
right? From
wild to tame.
Right.
So, and they have lots of components of the program. They do fitness. They put them on a Whole30 diet, like a very healthful diet.
Yeah.
They work with them with their medications. They teach them all these skills. So any of them, when they go out of the program, it's 42 or 43 days. They could then go work in that area if they wanted to, or anyway, they've integrated all of their treatments and been with other veterans in a very holistic, beautiful outdoor setting. We did not work with the veterans. We would come in for the 3 weeks beforehand and set up the kitchen and cook for the whales. The big donors would come in and they want to swing a hammer for a week, help put up a new facility. And so we cooked for them. So that's what we would do. But I can't, it's too much. It's like 15 hours a day, every day for 3 weeks. It's too much all at once for me. So last year was the third year. That will be my last year. I invite Brian to continue going there. It's a lot. It was too much for me. It's amazing what people can do for each other.
Oh yeah. With just a little bit
of encouragement.
It's very simple. Just love people. Love them where they are. Love them how they are. Make sure you're not making life harder for people.
Yeah.
The 4 words I hate. The 4 words I hate: always, never, everybody, nobody.
Yeah.
As soon as that word shows up in a conversation, I'm like Rudder, like the hair on that. I'm just like this. I mean, there are some truisms, I guess, but largely they are flung about with abandon.
We talked about
that
this
we answered
already. What is it that you're not good at?
Tech.
Tech.
In a nutshell. I'm pretty much of a Luddite, and I was the late adopter of even a cell phone. I'm like, I guess I have to get a smartphone. Now I adore having all of those.
Yeah, right.
I'm not really a hater, but I never had a job where that capacity was really important. You remember how handy Brian was with like building PowerPoints? Like, why would I struggle to build a PowerPoint when I could give him the paper and he could do it in 15 minutes?
Absolutely.
And I organized the cabinets.
Yeah.
So it's a great,
there you go.
Yeah. And you know what else I love is the idea that if we all can acknowledge what our strengths and weaknesses are. Right. My dad asked me this question one time when he was close to dying. He said, I don't know. He goes, I'm stuck a lot about people suffering right now. Like, why is that built into the system?
Right.
And this thing it was not a Darla thing. You have to understand. I just really felt like I was a little conduit for this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe, and this is not an answer, is a possible way to view at things, or look at things. I said, when somebody needs something, that's when another person has the opportunity to know themselves as a contribution.
Right.
So that I never have to learn computers, because you could always.
There you go. I can. I'll give you a DVD. I'll make you a DVD.
No, but I feel illiterate now, though. Truthfully, I'm to the point now where I'm like, okay, there's money left in the GI Bill. I need to go back and do it's not that bad, right? I know to math on a computer, but I dislike it intently. And if someone else will do it for me, you're not changing your own oil in your car, are you?
No.
Chris does that.
No. That's what mechanics are for. We got to keep them employed.
Yeah, so I just need a little, what do they call it? Geek Squad. I think I'll get by as long as there's a Geek Squad.
There's a lot of community programs that, will teach you how to do it. And,
well, we probably should get to our last 2 questions.
So is there a cause, and you touched on this, a cause or an organization that you support, and how can we direct our listeners to them?
Friends of Acadia National Park.
Nice.
Heroes and Horses, the Fisher House.
Yeah.
Which is like the Ronald McDonald House for military families and veterans and their extended families. It is a place for them to come together and stay and be well taken care of while their family members being treated. And we've done a ton of volunteering at the one here in Salt Lake City when Brian was in culinary school.
Oh, fantastic.
So we would bring in a couple of chefy friends and cooking at the Fisher House. People were always like, oh, thank you so much so you can go down there and cook. You can donate gift cards. You can volunteer your time. Maine Island Trail Association, a little shout out. If you ever go to Maine, you can boat that archipelago like you hike the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
You do a little bit or a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right. Those are my faves right now.
Well, let's get to our last one before our men folk revolt.
Over.
We promised them dinner after this. What friend of yours do you think we should meet?
Okay. You might know her. She is like us, was an active duty spouse, married someone in the military. Then you're straddling that like spouse, service member, then super active, super funny. Like, she makes me laugh all the time. And she's getting her PhD now in creating new learning systems for kids.
Oh, wow.
So they live in Seattle, Lake Issaquah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
He's a pilot for Alaskan Airlines. He flies and she's finishing her PhD, and she's smart and funny. They were stationed in Japan with us. They were stationed in Utah with us. and they were stationed in DC with us. We've known them since they were dating.
Oh,
They
wow.
were dating, two captains dating in Japan, got married. We went to their wedding. Their kids are grown up and in college now. Well, actually, Dexter is a senior in high school, but they're love. She's great. I highly recommend Jill Zablocki. She's like that right amount of like purpose and play. She's
Awesome.
like in the wheelhouse. So that's my suggestion.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much, you guys, for
You are
inviting me
welcome.
around.
You're welcome. And this was our first in studio guest. This was kind of cool.
Yes. Very nice.
We had like a lot of the same thoughts because we decided, I was like, should we not tell Elizabeth and we'll
I
surprise
said,
her?
I don't even know if you knew I was in Utah.
It makes me happy that you guys have had a chance to all hang out and reconnect.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're
And we'll
welcome.
talk to you soon,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Find us at facebook.com/YSMMF podcast and Instagram at YSMMF podcast for episode announcements. Thanks.
When we get to be really good at this in our third year, we're always just trying to improve this. And
Well, I'm
But
happy
right-
to be a guinea pig.
Well, but right now it's all Googling and Missy and I just talking, and that's how we figured it out.
that's right.